So it kind of ignites interest and dialogue all the time. So I think it's putting the brand into people's lives every day versus more on their shopping visits or in their conversations with friends. It's just more entering their lives every day, and it's kind of increasing the importance of a brand and of building that dialogue.
So also, in your opinion, can a pure fashion company secure VC financing?
Ooh, dangerous.
Without an e-commerce strategy?
I think, first of all, I'm the odd one here because I do mergers and acquisitions. I'm just an advisor. I don't have that much money anyway to invest. But I see a lot of things, and I think today in the angel investing, at least, there's a lot of interest in tech. There's a lot of interest in, talking about scalability, customer acquisition, and when you see beautiful fashion brands that don't have that, I think they are really at a disadvantage. The burden is much higher, much more difficult to really create interest. There's so many of them, so how are you different? How long will it take for you to start making money? And all that with, of course, from an M&A perspective, what I call the Michael Kors effect of everyone thinks they're worth resilient. And so, when you have tech, you can demonstrate somehow how you're going to get there. When you have a fashion brand and you want that kind of valuation, it's very challenging.
Can I answer? Something was brought up, I heard, in other discussions. What I'm noticing today is that fashion companies that have a tech element to it are probably finding it a little bit easier to get funding, and I'll tell you why. The venture capital world, most of it is tech, and if you have a tech element, you're going to attract more of those investors that are doing tech investing. I'm noticing that even a lot of the e-commerce only brands are starting to get investments from tech groups because e-commerce is all about tech and having efficiency with selling on your website. So the tech elements I think increase the ability to broaden your audience for investors.
I would also add that there's always been a dirty word, which is the fashion risk. So when you're an investor and all you have is a fashion brand to look at, your concern typically has been too much fashion risk, not doing it. That's changing. There's a lot more interest today, and you will talk about more in the contemporary market, and the awareness of brands like Michael Kors, like Tory Burch, really can create value. A few years ago, that was not the case, and everyone focused on fashion risk. And so that's where the tech component at least allowed those companies to be presentable. And that's changing.
Yeah, I'm going to give a different take on this a little bit. I don't, by the way, I'm a technology investor. And so I would, as David said, I probably come to this from a firm perspective longer, although I started my career out in retail. I did a tech product that was in retail in the early 90s, and we've been backing companies, brands. I started a brand, I own a couple brands, and so I might maybe be a more enlightened tech investor. But I'll say this, I said this last year at the conference. I don't understand what fashion tech means. I don't understand, because I don't see store-based companies saying, well, we're a fashion real estate play. This is so integral. If you are an entrepreneur, and by the way, I'm not a big fan of resellers. And I'm working on this actually manifesto of sorts that I'll finish over break about the future, I think, of retailers who I think are basically screwed. The future is about brand. It's about people who create. I can find 1 million people out there who can do some clever little thing with whatever kind of technology, or say, hey, I wear clothes, so therefore why don't I start a clothing business? If you can create a brand that connects to your customer, you are doing something absolutely miraculous. Those are the people that I want to back. Now, how do you do that? If you did this in 1993, the first thing you would do is you'd walk out and find, how do I find somebody to sell product to the customer who's ultimately going to buy it? Now, you start out saying, how do I find my customer? How do I connect to my customer? How do I build a relationship with my customer? Dave was talking about the aspects of the internet, about how that is about relationship. A brand is your relationship with customer? How do you build your brand? How do you connect? And then how do you build and how do you generate revenue? Frankly, my investment perspective is really easy. I don't care what you do. I don't try to sit there and say, hey, this is going to be big, this is going to be hot. I won't take the fashion risk. The risk that I want to take is I want to take on your execution risk. And the way I get comfortable with that is, have you created something? Have you sold it? Have you sold more of them? And does the market prove that you can exist? You can do this going up into the right, actually here for you up into the right. I can help you do this. And we've done it with a number of businesses, Wally Wally Doodle, Tommy John, and a few others that are going to be announced shortly.
That's a great answer. So, we see all these business plans. How do you look at retail as part of that plan? Because it's an expensive rollout. If there's a balance, because you want to create a brand, one of the presenters earlier, who I met with before, but we need to get into stores. We need to have a retail presence. But from an investor perspective, it gives you concerns because it's expensive. So what do you think about retail versus omnichannel? It's all connected.
Yeah, I mean, I would say first that most of the companies that we look at today have to be omnichannel. They have to be, available in, the product. It all builds on top of each other. And we have companies that are retailers that have gone into, obviously, they have very active websites, and then they have QVC on top of it. And whenever we're on QVC, our website just goes crazy, and then people start coming to our stores. And then we do direct response kind of advertising and campaigns. So it all plays together. You've got to be, people are just traveling around. They don't want to, the store is just one sort of advertising. It's something that people pass by, they remember, it's almost like a billboard. And it is a place to buy things, but it is only part of the story. And if you're only relying on retail, it's going to be a very expensive way to grow your brand. It's a very high fixed cost, especially given the seasonality of just a pure retail business. That's why we have Black Friday, you lose business, 11 months a year, and make money 1 month a year. The e-commerce and all these direct responses kind of draw traffic in on the round.
I would just add, agree with you, that omnichannel is extremely important. One thing I do, which is quite interesting, is look at a company like Nasty Gal that didn't exist 3 years ago, 4 years ago, and they're now over 200 million. So they were creating a digital space, and now they feel the need to create bricks and mortar. They're doing it from the perspective of someone who's connected with the consumer, they understand, but they now want to be able to reach the consumer in different ways. The other thing I'd like to add is we at Brundle Global Partners spend a lot of time in a number of luxury and brand segments. Some of them are watches and jewelry. And what's happened in the watch sector, and I know tonight a wonderful watch and brand, some of them might bring or not, fixed, etc. But the watch industry has been brutal in the last 10 years in creating retail all over the world for their brands. And they do that because they want to control this is more the luxury watches, huge capex, huge impact on the multi-brand retailers that lose the stellar brands. And that's where the industry's going, which of course will squeeze out the medium-sized and smaller brands that don't have the ability to do that. But going back to the purpose of here, omnichannel really is the way to go, and QVC and online and some more. And I'm sure that Lawrence is going to have a few things to say about the bad retail people.
No, I don't have bad things to say. Omnichannel is to me like Web 2.0. It means everything and it means nothing. And I think the problem is that a lot of people throw it around and when you sit there and say, what's your strategy? Well, we're omnichannel. Well, what does that mean? And I think that what David was talking about there is one of the most compelling things that you have as a brand. A brand is a relationship, I said earlier. So how do you connect with your relationship? How do you connect with your customer? It's not just via the phone, it's not just online. Think about how you connect with people. It's a physical experience. What does that physical experience look like? Does it have to be there all the time? What should it be? Maybe it should be a fair. Maybe it should be a whiskey tasting. Maybe it should be something else. Maybe it should be a permanent store. Maybe there should be a store on every single street corner. But what defines it isn't a checklist of saying we have to be this kind of channel, we have to have this kind of web strategy. It's really a holistic approach looking at your customer and how you want to connect and build out that relationship as your business matures. And so I think the concept of omnichannel, I think, is one of the most important things. And I do worry, I think, when you see a lot of the VC-backed companies that have raised a ton of money who are now opening stores, I think sometimes it's almost for the sake of, I've got money, I've got to open a store, as opposed to really what am I trying to accomplish. And I think, I think this is why I'm so excited about this space. All this is being sorted out. Every single player out there is going to be changing. The existing players can figure out where their stores are going to be, and new players are going to figure out how they're going to fit into this whole thing. So how existing stores, how wholesale, how it all fits together is really going to be fascinating over the coming years.
So one of the things that I see all the time is fabulously talented designers just don't understand the business of fashion. As an investor, as an investment banker, what would you say to the designers out there that they need to understand in terms of taking their design, their talent, their creativity, but being more effective in terms of raising capital? So that to me is what makes this industry the most difficult in terms of getting people who are creative talented to understand the story of business.
So, I think the most difficult thing I find when I talk to a person who's really a more fashion-oriented person is just thinking about what the business is all about. They understand design. They might have a decent idea if I ask them enough questions about what their positioning is, why they're different, why people are going to connect to their brand. They sort of get through that, after a lot of questions. Sometimes they don't. They just love the design. They have, a consumer, including themselves, in their mindset as to what they're attracting. But then afterward, I start asking questions about the business model. And I'm always, I find I have to ask around 30 questions about, okay, so how are you going to get revenue? And then if I tell you that you have to have, I was talking to somebody this morning, I said you have to have $10 million of revenue. Think about your average price point and how many units you're going to have to sell to get to that $10 million number. And then I said, think about how many, what your organization is going to have to look like to actually handle $10 million of revenue. And then it starts coming alive that they realize this isn't just me designing nice clothing, it's me, having to get involved in bigger numbers and for more people in a much bigger organization. And that's where it becomes real. But, getting to that point of taking it from the design point to the business plan, it takes a while, and people like ourselves, spend a lot of time trying to, get through that because that's what we're investing in.
I couldn't agree more, and I think for the creator, I'd amplify that along marketing and branding. I was asked a room of graduate fashion designers from a prominent school, give me a definition of a brand, nobody could. I think if you're a designer and you want to build a company, you can't define a brand. If you can't define how you're going to reach your customer, how you can connect with your customer, what you're going to try to say to your customer, I think you should go look to be an employee someplace. I think that's the essence of what a creator does. You've got to have that connection because your creations are a manifestation of that relationship.
I will jump in and a little bit contradict my friend Lawrence. Just to say that for me, a creative person, entity, really brings vision, creativity, innovation. I agree with what you're saying, but sometimes the best thing is really a team. So you have on one hand the designer, the visionary, and then the business partner, and then together they can build it. Because you've all seen that Angelo left Burberry and Arbeli's taking over. He's a designer, he's a creative. He's taken on the job of CEO of Burberry. And for me, that's a huge question mark. How do you really have all those talents? Can you really run a company, be a business person, and be a creative type? And I think that the best model is when you have a combination of creative on one side and business person on the other.
And I guess the other part is that, as a designer, understand what your limitations are and be willing to, to understand that other people will be better at certain things than you are, and let them do it. Let them do what they're best at.
Which is not the easiest.
But then you talk about co-founders. When you talk about a real two-headed beast, there, and that obviously has been kind of the mode of operating for this industry. I'm involved in one now. We have to recognize that early on. I think some people may not want to recognize it.
Also, it's good if the designer has had real experience before. It's really tough to look at a startup designer where the designer has had no prior experience and therefore even less business acumen in the invention.
Yeah, I can answer my next question is, what are you looking for in management? And I think you're looking for flexibility, you're looking for experience, you're looking for passion. In my world, in trying to prepare them for you, I'm looking for people who are going to be prepared, who are going to be realistic, and who are going to be good salespeople. Because the designs are the designs, there's a lot of great designs that you have to really sell. So how do you, I guess what Mara said, how do you respond to the pitch? What's a great pitch? What's a pitch where you come back and at night you come home and over dinner you say, that was a great pitch, as opposed to 100 other pitches that you hear and you go, okay, next.
Hi, I'm growing 100% month over month.
The worst pitch is when you ask an investment banker like myself to make a pitch, because you know that the private equity group or the owner is there to listen to your ideas on the buyers, on the valuation, and then we'll give the assignment to a name brand firm. But that's not the question, right?
I was thinking only slightly facetious. I think it's really important. The reason why for us traction is so important is that you're selling your customers. That I don't want to be in a position where I'm judging whether or not I think you're good, but I think who's good in a lot of cases isn't, and vice versa. And it's important, not that I think it's good. My passion isn't about necessarily the products, it's about building businesses. I want to see that your customers think it's good, and that there are more of those customers out there. And so that's for me, yeah, it's great to have that growth month over month, but it's really, that growth is a result of a real connection that a company has with its customer base that is demonstrable in multiple metrics across its operations.
I agree. I think it's now just proof of concept as well. You want to see something there, you want to see some proof that something's connected. I think probably the worst press pitches I've seen, and honestly it happens a lot in this industry in particular, is first of all, entrepreneurs who don't listen. People who just talk. And I think sometimes it's out of nervous energy, but they're just talking instead of listening to what the questions really are. Second probably would be just knowing it all, whereas thinking they know it all. And third is understanding the limitations and the challenges. It's okay. In fact, I prefer an entrepreneur who understood the challenges and may not have the answers yet, just somebody who said, oh, there's no challenges, I can get through this, no problem. I'd rather them be a partner in this whole thing than feeling like they have to impress the investor on every issue. If they don't know the answer, they'll just say it.
Not for nothing, but that was worth the whole day for you. I mean, that's exactly what should come out of this type of event, is to learn in the real world what they're looking for, what they're hearing, and not for you to just speak to the investors and speak with them. Not just to talk, just talk at them and just tell them what you think. Listen to what they say. Dave, you especially, you were president of a large fashion company, Next USA. You were in the business, you ran it, you were very high level. And then I noticed one of your investments was in a premium jeans company. So what made you, as an investor, invest in that segment of the market?
I think the denim market is a unique market. I think we all know, in America especially, we wear a lot of denim, no matter what. And it's a low fashion, it's a low risk fabrication that you can do a lot with and still stay, in a category that people are going to buy a lot of. And there's been a constant, for the last 30, 40 years, starting with Levi and Lee, there's been a constant flow of brand names that have grown significantly, starting in the denim category. And we invested in NYDJ, Not Your Daughter's Jeans, and it's grown very nicely. It had a point of differentiation. It was for a more mature